So if 45% of those salaries are covered, you'd be looking at 165,000 or so. Assuming council approves this report, Mr. Baird's office, HR, a number of us would go forward with the hiring initiatives. Realistically, we won't have people in place until September, at some point in September. So you're looking at the last quarter of the year, and roughly a quarter of $165,000 is 40,000 plus or minus a little bit. So that would be the variance we'd be looking at in the levy spending this calendar year. And in the future, well, we're at 45% this year. Next year, we expect to be at 50% salary coverage. So 50% of the roughly 300 is what you're looking at as far as levy impact. I think that subject to questions, that's what I'd like to tell you. Mr. Baird, myself, and Ms. Robinson are available to answer questions, assuming you have some.
Thank you, Mr. Cribbs, and certainly questions at this point to county staff. I'll start with Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Cribbs, for this information. First question is, why did it take so long to identify the need, like these onerous resource informational requirements? Like, why couldn't we have done that 6 months or a year ago?
Well, in fairness, I wasn't employed here then, but all of the things, Norfolk County doesn't go inventing the building code, the fire, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are provincial standards that we're charged with enforcing. And you start from an informational place where in any given application, you need this piece of info, because there's a problem with the hydrology in this application. You ask for the water up front. And then you kind of end up doing it the next time and the time after that, because it worked really well for that one difficult project. And it's just sort of the bottom line is, when you look at the system as a whole, with this direction of council, staff stepped back, took the time, and did a hard analysis. And Ms. Robinson spent a lot of time in this and devoted a lot of thought. She happens to have some pretty good credentials with respect to development engineering. And to have some, but it's impossible to get out of the trenches when you're drowning. You're drowning in application. Because of the instruction of council, we went out of our way to do this analysis, and this is what we found. It was just sort of a natural evolution.
I commend Ms. Robinson for giving us those tips and making things more efficient, really. That's fantastic, and all the staff that worked on this. The other question I have is, we're having, I guess, 2 staff going to be moving to the Robinson building. And I thought that building, I thought our accommodation space there was already full. So how are we going to make office space for these 2 additional staff?
If I could answer that one, Councillor Columbus, through the Mayor. We have some areas that currently we do what we call hoteling. We have the small workstations that are used by the staff that come in from Langton for meetings, so they don't have to go back. They can actually work there. Those would be reconfigured. We've also got a number of staff that are in the office only briefly in the morning because they spend their day on the road doing field work and enforcement and so on. So we're looking at just creative ways of sharing existing workstations and so on. And we're confident we can do that. We don't need an additional space at this point.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Black, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke, through you to County Manager. Just wondering, we have seen that there is a backlog, there is some serious deficiencies going on already, and I know you've already said that this won't really be implemented, so it's not going to fix our problem immediately. It'll be a little ways down the road. So how do we address the deficiency now that we're experiencing and receiving letters about?
Well, there's a 2-part answer. The one is, we have a large number of staff who are working very hard, and they're going to continue to do so. That is a partial answer. It isn't a long-term perfect slam dunk. assuming we were able to bring on these new staff in September, it takes, I can say this with good and recent authority, it takes a little while to get the ground under your feet, to figure out the lay of the land. It's really helpful to know the name of the people around you, you know. So, you know, there's going to be some lag time there. Ms. Robinson's division, and specifically the department at the moment that does the technical engineering review, has been utilizing the services of external consultants, and that will have to continue. There is no way to avoid that necessary resource because, quite frankly, we don't have the horsepower at the moment. We simply don't have enough staff. And that will continue on until such time as we've hopefully worked through the worst or all of the backlog, as the case may be. We'll monitor that, because of course our goal is always to reduce cost as much as possible. But at the moment, the solution is external consultants, along with a lot of work by a lot of people, planning from engineering and onwards, and so it goes.
Councillor Height?
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Through you to Mr. Baird, you mentioned how many applications for planning? Was it 290?
We're, yeah, very similar to the figures from last year, about 290 applications.
And last year was 290 as well?
Yeah, plus or minus, correct.
Okay. So with that, obviously, one of the planners has been working on the official plan review, which is now being sent out. So is she working now on development applications?
Through the mayor, the individual you're referring to has, she's our principal planner, deals primarily with policy development. So there's lots of other policies work that we've been holding off on. She'll be moving, you're correct, it's, the official plan is off to the ministry right now for their 90-day review. And she'll be turning her efforts towards there was a downtown policy review. I know Councillor Black is aware we've had some of those discussions. So there is a review, we're doing that in-house as well.
Okay, and then on page 5 of 9 of our report, or 133 of our agenda, it says here, Norfolk County currently has a vacant planning technology position in its QP band. Does that mean it's an empty spot we got there that's not filled?
No, through the mayor, what that refers to is there is a position in the organization called planning technician. The former individual in that capacity has moved up to what we call a senior planning tech. So that position, it's not a vacancy, it's a position, a job description.
Oh,
and Mr. Cribbs is suggesting that in this scenario that we would use that junior entry level job description to fulfill that GIS requirement.
I got it. We already have it defined. I understand. Okay, then through you, Mr. Mayor, to Public Works. On page 135, I see that you've made some very recent changes. In fact, July the 3rd, where you've made some modifications to things. And what was the purpose of that, and how do you think that will affect the workflow?
Through the mayor to council, the purpose of making those changes was, I'm going to use a phrase, it was the way it was currently structured was a very top-heavy process. So we were requesting a substantial amount of money right at the very beginning of the process. And the result of that was that it was causing us great delays at the beginning of the process, as opposed to allowing the developer to obtain the approvals that they needed so that they could start the detailed design work. The way we've made these changes, it allows general concepts and certain things to be addressed in the beginning to satisfy us that there is a acceptable development and a possible solution to the problem. And then it provides the developer time to develop those solutions, work with staff, and provide it at the end of the day when it's actually required for construction. So what it's doing is we're not pre-designing everything before we go into the process. We're recognizing that there are solutions to any engineering problems and that we can work out the details later. So the work will still need to be reviewed at the end of the day, but it allows the developer to work on doing a variety of things all at the same time. Right now, they were delayed because of the way we had our process structured. It will not change the workload for the development staff. It allows the developer to do work at the same time as the county is doing work. So it effectively shortens the time for the development community without changing the process.
Yeah, I see, and thank you for that. Now, in the recommendation, there's one development technologist, and that's a permanent position. Would you not be able to get by with a 2-year contract in case there is a slowdown in building applications?
Through the mayor to council, the development community, as you are well aware, is booming not only in Norfolk County, but in a variety of other places. And it has been my experience that we have been unable to hire somebody on a 2-year contract. And essentially, with development, a lot of the benefit of development is the local knowledge and the local flavor and all of that sort of stuff. It takes the average engineering type of person to get about 18 months up to speed before they're fully productive. And if we were on a 2-year contract, they wouldn't be fully productive until almost effectively the end of their contract. And I don't feel that it would be a good value for the organization to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. And my last question, Mr. Mayor, is over to the treasurer. It's mentioned here that there will have to be a fee and service review. Now, if this moves ahead and we absorb the $375,000 additional salary that we're looking at here right now, you will bring that into the fee, which will be approved before 2018, or will it be a whole year to go before it's approved for 2019?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we try to review fees on an annual basis, and given the planning issue that we have, we will be reviewing these fees before the 2018 budget. So hopefully we can incorporate that into that budget. And the part of the review will be what exactly do we have in there as our costs to recover. The GIS specialist is one example that where I don't think any of that time is incorporated into those fees. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to look at.
Thank you, and will any of this be able to come out of the reserve fund for the building and bylaw stabilization fee, or whatever that one is called?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's an excellent question. That is actually another, you can see in the reserve report that we were going to look at we call them indirect costs that we charge the building department, anything related to producing these building permits and so on and so forth. So again, we're going to look into what costs that go into that with this new initiative.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Broughton.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. Since I read this report, I took the opportunity to talk to a lot of people that are trying to do some developments and are also working with local consultants that deal with these issues. And the common denominator came right down to site plans and the delays in getting site plans approved. It wasn't a case of zoning bylaw amendments or official plan amendments. It was the site plan process that seemed to be dragged out. Some of the comments, that were, they hired a consultant. The consultant would deal with the site plan process, and then they would be required to have a peer review on the whole process again. And some of we had quite a discussion, and some of them are very recent developments that haven't been approved yet. And I don't want to name them or name the developments because I don't think that's fair to those people. They don't want to, they do feel that if they complain, they're going to upset the apple cart for their application, which I accept that. In the process, first of all, I guess the 196 new homes, Mr. Baird, if I may, through you, Mayor Luke, we hired 2 people in the building department. I hope that was improved. We did that just a couple of months ago, did we not? Is that process improved?
Through the mayor, yes, absolutely. And that's a good question to talk to the development community. We have a division assistant that provides that front customer service, right, and a zoning administrator that does that initial review. Part of the problem we had was people would make application for building permit, and it would go through the process only to find out, well, you need, the zoning's not correct. You need to do a zoning amendment or a minor variance. Yeah. And so this position is that first point of contact that reviews that and says, you know what, you don't even need a planning application. You can go straight to a building permit. And that has tremendously improved that. They also provide customer service. I think a lot of the issues that our building community had, I think have been greatly improved. You know, we've got two of our top local constructors here, and I think, you know, they've spoken to me, and I think are pleased with the way things are going. But that's just one part. That's just the permit intake process. There's the development review. This is what we're being challenged with right now.
Okay, well, again, I was hoping that would improve. We hired a couple of people, but again, I go back to the site plan process of some of our other major developments that, you know, we've all heard about Titan Trailers, we've all heard about the Dover Wharf, and I could comment on some of those specifically, but I'm going to generalize it here in a way. These people, most of the local consultants have the site plan guidelines. They know what to start off with. It's the out of area consultant comes in, want to do something for somebody. I assume you give them the guidelines and say, you're zoned okay, go ahead and start your process. It's the process that slows them down. And this isn't, it comes from the local people, and I've talked to one that's doing it out of town, and it's, again, I won't name it, but it's, I spoke with him yesterday. He's a local fella doing it for an out-of-town developer. He gave me a lot of details, but when I summarized it in my own mind, I said, listen, he hires a consultant, he designs it according to the guidelines, and then he pays that consultant. Then we review it all, and I'm sure there's applications or whatever we have to pay for, but in the end, that consultant is doing the work. And I'm starting to wonder why we can't farm the whole application process for site plans, not the other things, just site plans for these commercial developments to the consultant that's doing it. He could call a meeting, bring in the staff, the fire, the ambulance, what are your requirements? Here's what I want. Everybody gives the consultant his information, and he goes back and he designs it. Sure, there's going to be a few things going back and forth, but the way they've described it to me is the delays when they come back. Oh, it's redlined here. Sits on somebody's desk for a while. These are the things you can hear from the developers. And in the end, they're paying the consultant anyways. So why don't we let the consultant do the process, make payment to the consultant, the owner, whoever it may be, and in the end let them have the approval process for us? Why can't we do it that way? I know there might be some going back and forth, but I think it's our process that, from what they've told me, slows them down. And I'm really of the opinion that, and I know, having talked with them, they could handle the process from start to finish. Now, I'm not talking about the planning part of it or anything like that, because that's a little more, what's the word, intricate maybe, but these people come before us all the time with development applications, and I just don't think that the document's there, here's the guidelines, go do it, come back, and if everything's good, you tell us, you approve it, and get on with it. Anyways, that's my comments, Your Worship. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions of staff on the report? Okay, we'll get on with some direction here. The motion that is printed on page 1 of 9 on your agenda on this report, I do have a seconder, Councillor Geisens. Do I have a mover for this? Councillor Black? So to go through this, Black has moved, Geisens has seconded this report, 1703 be received information, and that council recognizes general need to adjust the county's administrative structure, increase staff resources with respect to our development applications, and to amend the administrative process with respect to the volume and timing of the information required on various planning and building applications. Further, that council authorize the county manager and the general manager of development and cultural service to take appropriate steps to hire 4 individuals, specifically an additional full-time planner on a 2-year contract, 1 planning technician, a permanent position, 1 development technologist, permanent position, and one manager of development of engineering, which would be a permanent position. And finally, that council approve both the proposed transfer of staff from the Engineering and Environmental Services Department to the Development and Cultural Services Department and the corresponding creation of a Development Engineering Division within the Development and Cultural Services Department. Okay, that is on the floor discussion. Councillor Height, then Black, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm wondering if you could divide and further that so that it's based by positions, because in here we're looking at a full-time planner and one planning technician. I'd like to see that separated out, if that's at all possible. Right now, the way I see it, the development technologist, the manager of development engineering, I can support that. What I've heard today from planning is there's 290 apps this year. There was 290 apps last year. Right? I concur with Councillor Brunton. What I hear is that it's our process that holds us back. It's not lack of manpower. It's the hoops. And the red tape that Norfolk County applies to the development community needs to be looked at as a whole. I feel personally that our official plan review, that's the Bible of red tape. That's what we've thrown on our development community now. And that's what they're struggling with now. Manpower, you can throw 20 more planners on it. They'll come up with more policies to slow down the whole process anyway. What I don't mind seeing the development technology and the engineering side of it move forward. The GIS stuff, we have students. Last I checked, we had at least 2 or something that worked with GIS to do some of our underground infrastructure. I don't know that they're struggling. Personally, I think with this report, I would have liked to saw that there was some actual money set aside from the building stabilization fund, or that one that we used for our bylaw or our permit system. I would have liked to see that come into this so that I'm not going into this blind, because that's what I'm doing right now. I'm blind at $232,000 for engineers that I will support, even though I don't know on the other side, are we going to get money back from it for that through those development fees. But Mr. Mayor, I'd like to see those other 2 positions out. I won't be supporting them.
So you would like, if I may, in the the third paragraph, pardon me, you would like a division of questions so that we vote. You would like to vote on the development technologist and manager of development engineering as one vote, and then the second part would be a vote on the full-time and the part-time planner.
Correct.
Thank you. The clerk has indicated that can be done. Councillor Black.
I was going to speak in favor of all of it, and I'll speak in favor.
You can, because you can vote on both parts
Yeah.
if you support both, or don't vote in favor of either if you don't, or one or the other.
Well, I'm going to support both of them, the whole report. And I guess everything's how you look at it. And I look at this as not just cost, but a service and a positive thing that Norfolk County is actually growing. I do recall the time when, I think it was around the beginning of amalgamation or thereabouts, when Simcoe and Norfolk County were actually in the negative in terms of population. We were going down. So now we're moving in the other direction. It's good to have development. It's growth, and it's slow maybe, but it's controlled and it's growth. So in order to facilitate that growth, we need to have an adequate supply of trained staff. And of course, I don't blame staff for all the rules and regulations that are out there, and that is the red tape that we experience. And, you know, I always tell people, well, look in the mirror, like who demands those rules and regulations? And, you know, something goes wrong in a building site, and then bingo, you know, you have to have a new rule, a new regulation. And when you start to pile them up, the next thing you know, you need a new employee, and you need a lawyer, and you need all of the above, which makes the cost a lot more expensive. So if you were to take today, a snapshot today versus 15 years ago at the number, like the red tape, I'm sure you'd see that there's far more red tape now because of demands from society. So don't blame staff, and I guess really I don't blame anybody. If we're going to move forward on this and and help facilitate the development of this county, we need to support this.
Thank you. Councillor Sonnenberg, then Wells.
I too will support the whole thing. We've just heard, the figures are there. The demand is there. Building and development are happening. I can attest to this, and I'm building a simple a building beside my house, a three-car garage. You know, I've had to wait for heavy equipment operators. I've had to wait for concrete formers. I've had to wait for framers. Everybody's busy. The county is growing and developing. We need more people to facilitate the process. Thank you.
Councillor Wells.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, the good news for this is I will not be making a long-winded speech, so you don't have to worry about sleeping or whatever. I would like to, however, start off by congratulating our county manager. He fits right into the Norfolk County way we do business, and that is to increase the staff complement. That seems to be what we do best in Norfolk County. And I have proof. Listen to this. Since 2010 to 2017, we've gone from 720 employees to today at 752. Now, I'm not great in math, but that's 8 years. The average is 4 new employees each year. All of this happening in a time when we have a hiring freeze. What was the point of us even passing the hiring freeze? There's something I'm missing here. You know, Mr. Mayor, regardless of the wonderful benefits of this, and there are benefits, nobody is saying that there are not benefits. But what I would like to see is that, and what I would support, is I would like to support doing more for less. That, to me, is what I think my ratepayers are looking for. And no matter how you try to slice it, there is a cost to what this motion represents. Whether it's 50 cents on the dollar, 60 cents on the dollar, there is a cost. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be supporting the both recommendations. And I know I was speaking with one of our employees today. They told me they had a stack of files that are backlogged, and you know, we got to get them moving along. The other thing that encourages me better is the fact that 45% of the staff salary costs, we heard from the county manager, are actually covered off by planning fees, which makes it much more palatable. Thank you.
Further discussion on the motion? We do not have our deputy mayor here. Councillor Geisens, I would ask that you come up, and I would like to vacate and take your seat so that I can debate the motion on the floor, please.
Mayor Luke.
Thank you very much, Councillor Geisens. In over 2.5 years as mayor, I have not done this before. I feel very strongly about the support of this report that I wish to give my 2 cents. I can tell you, Mr. Chair, that, or Mr. Acting Mayor, that of all the parts of my job that I do in this county, there is no complaint bigger than what we're trying to solve in this report. And that is that this county does not have the capacity to deal with development, rezoning applications, site plans, et cetera, in the fashion that we need to. Our county is moving ahead. They are finding us, and we are experiencing growth that we've never experienced before last year and again this year. And I believe, Mr. Chair, that this will continue. I don't know why it would stop when you compare the price of land, the rate of taxation, the cost of homes, and our lifestyle in Norfolk County, and the fact that our demographics in this country, and certainly in this province, are bringing people into Norfolk County. The word is out. The county manager has been here approximately 11 or 12 weeks, and I don't think there is 2 days go by when he doesn't listen to my whining about people wanting to know where their building permit is, where their rezoning application is. And Mr. Chair, even their Committee of Adjustment minor variance, they feel is held up. We've heard the figures from Mr. Baird. I'm not going to go over them. Our development is moving ahead. It is real, and it is going to continue, and we must do something about it. And I've talked to each individual councillor here on a one-to-one basis, and they know my frustrations, and they have many themselves. And when I spoke to Mr. Cribbs about his report sometime on Friday when it became public, I looked him in the eye and said, I need to know before we spend this money if this is the solution. And he looked me in the eye, Mr. Chair, and he said, I have worked on this with staff. We have worked hard on this. They have listened to the concerns of this council, of this serious issue, and he believes, and I believe him, that this maybe won't be perfect, but reorganization and some extra bodies is going to do the job. And I have not heard of a better solution. Just by coincidence, Mr. Chair, Friday morning before this report became public, I dealt with 4 builders, individuals, and 4 of them, 2 of them are sitting here in the room, that wondered where their building permits were for condos. I dealt with a developer in Port Dover. I dealt with a developer in Cortland. I dealt with an individual citizen that wants to get his rezoning application that he submitted last month wants to get it brought to Committee of Adjustment, to this council, hopefully late August or early September. So it's about backlog, number of applications. We've heard through the site plan application, and Councillor Brunton, you're quite right. That's the biggest thing that causes the bottleneck, as it's mentioned in this report. Lee Robinson has been honest and said, the staff of 3 engineering people I have cannot do the work on these site plans and get them back to the planning department. She has admitted that. Thank you, Lee. She doesn't have the hands to do it. This review has been for the process of planning and development for this county as a whole. It didn't look at one area, it looked at the whole process. And it has identified in here, and I'm not going to go through them, I've got them highlighted, but it has identified that we need to coordinate. And the left hand needs to start knowing what the right hand is doing. And these developers that we have, they are ones, by their applications and their building, that are bringing us money into this county. So it's about application fees. It's about almost 50% now of these 4 positions, Mr. Chair, will be paid for by development fees, by the people in the business building the homes and bringing residents and bringing growth and all the spin-offs. I'm not going to go through those. Okay, I've gone on long enough, and I know we need a break before 5 o'clock. A couple more things. The process needs to be changed. It needs to be fixed. We have outstanding planners, engineers, building people, but we need to streamline this system, and we need to get on with it. One of the developers told me on the phone when I questioned him, are you willing to pay more, because our finance department has mentioned application fees being increased. And they said right away, absolutely, on a large project, if it costs me an extra $3,000 or $4,000, let's say for an application fee, that's worth more to me than a 2, 3, 4-month delay. Because I have money tied up, I'm paying interest, I have trades. And then when you come along on top of 280 homes last year built exceeded the city of Brantford, when you're dealing with that type of volume, and then suddenly you get a American $30 million project thrown into the mix, and you get a $30 million Titan project, and you get a Dover Coast Medical Center, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know how some of our staff can handle it in the busy season. So, it's time for me to put up or shut up, to put it quite bluntly. And if I don't support this, how am I going to look the developers, the builders, the investors, how am I going to look them in the eye and say, I know there's a problem, but we're doing nothing about it, or there is no problem? How am I going to do that? There is one thing I would like to accomplish this term of council. It's getting this thing together. So please, I don't have to twist anybody's arm, or you people. You people are all smart people, and you know how you're going to vote, and you know what you're going to support, and I respect it. I am certainly going to support the hiring of these 4 people. The one position, if approved, will be for a 2-year contract, and we'll see where we are. I believe this county is going to continue to be on the move, and the better years are going to be ahead. And we have to do something. Is this going to be the magic thing? I don't think it's going to be 100% perfect for a while, but I am convinced that this is going to be a huge start of solving the problems that we have. And it's not that we don't have people working, Mr. Chair. It's that we've got to do things differently. We've got to address the fact that 5 years ago we handled 50% of the applications that we are today. 50% of the development 5 years ago is now doubled, but we can't handle it. We got to fix it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Brunton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just again, did I hear Councillor Height say he wanted to divide the question?
That is correct.
The motion. Well, I'm just speaking to it. I have no problem with the 2-year contract for the planner and the planning technician and the GIS. My concern is the other side of the chart that I'm looking at. That's this one here. I think we've all got. I believe strongly that can be handled instead of duplicated in some respects that it is now. I believe it can be handled externally under, I wouldn't even call it a contract. I believe it can be handled externally a lot better. So, and without hiring all this staff. So if we could divide the question and also a recorded vote, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, well, the mayor will be back, I think, to do that. Councillor Wells.
Well, thank you very much. And I certainly want to thank the mayor. He was very passionate and certainly made some excellent points. But I still go back to the thing that I had before. Yes, I realize we have a problem. Yes, I know the builders have a problem. But you know, one way of solving the problem is to have more staff, which is about going to happen. What about the other way of suggesting that maybe we have too much damn red tape? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair.
No other speakers? Mayor Luke, come on back.
Okay, 2 things. We have a mover and seconder, and we also have a division of questions, so I will do the first question. Did you take that? Oh, you devil. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, thank you. The first motion will be to, for the entire motion, and the vote will be for the hiring of 2 individuals. It will be the permanent position, in other words, the one development technologist, and the other part of that motion will be the hiring of 1 manager of development engineering, which is also permanent. And would you conduct the recorded vote, please? Yes, go ahead.
Confused. I thought the division was going to be for the planner and planning technician and the other engineering side of things. You're dividing it the other way.
The first motion will be for the development technologist, and the second, and the manager of development, and the second part, which I will have the clerk conduct, will be for the full-time planner and the 1 planning technician. That's the order that I got from
Okay.
Councillor Height. Councillor Sonnenberg?
Just as a point of order, should we not be discussing whether or not we even wanted to divide the issue? Is that up to one counselor, or is that up to council?
That'll be your call.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, normally you can divide a question just by indicating that you want to divide it. The only issue here is that we're dividing 1 paragraph, so we're breaking a paragraph into 2 pieces, but you generally do have the ability to divide.
We're going to divide it as requested, and this will be called the question on a recorded vote for the development technologist and the manager of development engineering position. Mr. Clerk?
Councillor Brunton. Councillor Black. Yes. Councillor Wells. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Yes.
Councillor Height.
Yes.
Councillor Geisens.
Yes.
Councillor Columbus.
Yes.
Mayor Luke.
Yes.
The motion carries 6-2. Sorry.
The other side of the division of question now will vote on the hiring of 2 positions, an additional full-time planner for a 2-year contract, and also a 1 planning technician, which is a permanent position. Mr. Clerk?
Go in the other direction this time. Councillor Columbus. Yes. Councillor Geisens.
Yes.
Councillor Height.
No.
Councillor Sonnenberg.
Yes.
Councillor Wells.
No.
Councillor Black.
Yes.
Councillor Brunton.
Yes.
Mayor Luke.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-2.
Let's,
The main motion still needs to be voted on.
I'm sorry, so the main motion, which is the balance of the motion, paragraphs 1, 2, and 4. Any discussion on those? If not, those in favor on the balance, thank you. That is carried very much. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Let's have a recess for 20 minutes, and at 5:05, we will start our presentations. Thank you.